Hey, I'm Maddy Barber, he's Jason Johnson, and this is our 6-part podcast series, which is a self-discovery journey into work life for the working adult.
That's right.
So this particular episode is a tribute to all the amazing bosses slash mentors out there and the ones we've had for whom we would not be who we are or where we are today if not for them.
Without whom we would not be where we are today were it not for them, yes.
You get that?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I rephrased it just slightly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does anyone come to mind when I talk about someone like that in your past?
Well, here's the thing, Maddy. I think a lot about leadership, and I think a lot about the different bosses I've had in my past. And I think it's kind of an even split between what I would call really good bosses and really bad bosses. And I think the one thing that I would take from the bosses that I had that exhibited really good leadership, from my point of view, they were the bosses who provided a really strong support system. And bosses who looked at their job almost as being they're almost being valets in a way. They're like there to make your job easier. So they'll offer words of encouragement. They'll give you, they might give you criticisms that you need to make your task easier or to make your output better. Or if you have any logistical issue, they'll settle that for you. If you need some time off, they'll give that to you. So they're there to almost as a servant. Like the bosses that I've really appreciated are the bosses that are humble enough to approach their job almost as service. Because I really feel like a really good boss has to be somebody who's really into other people and bringing out the best in other people and encouraging them to be their best and making it easier for them to do their best. And the thing is, though, about having all those qualities is it's rare qualities. And a lot of times, the people who rise to the top aren't people who have those qualities. They have sort of opposite qualities. You know, they've been looking out for themselves. They've been trying to, you know, step on others to get ahead, and this kind of idea. So I've had both types of bosses, but the bosses I've really responded to, they haven't really been my mentors so much as they've been advocates and a support system, I think. And
I think mentors are kind of advocates for you because
that's true.
They believe in you, and that's what the topic of today is. A boss who mentors can be a game changer in terms of career success. And we want you to really just think about all the people you've worked with and for, and the leaders that you've worked under, and who falls under this category, and how much has that attributed to your career success.
I think, Maddy, that what you're talking about, it goes a step beyond what I was talking about. So not just somebody who supports you in what you do and makes you better, but who actually teaches you, is actually able to raise your game significantly. You know what I mean? So it's not just, I'll make it easier for you to do what you do. I'll make what you do so much better. I'll teach you new things. I'll show you new ways of doing whatever it is you're doing, or time management skills, or people skills, or whatever it is. There's somebody who takes you and makes you better at your job.
Someone who is willing to share their expertise and knowledge.
Yes.
To help you and better yourself.
That's right.
In your journey of personal and career growth.
Yeah.
Right? So we had one who passed away.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw Jamie as, so Jamie was our late program director of Kids 92. I think that's the one we shared, so
yeah.
It's a good place to start. And I think
he was such a character.
In many ways, I would like this episode to be a tribute to him.
That's beautiful, yeah.
It's also one of the reasons why after he passed away, I left radio, and it made it so much easier because, you know, I talked about leaving for so long, but when you have a mentor there whom you respect, whom you owe a lot of your success to, it's hard to leave. And I think if he was still alive, I probably would never leave, but I'll be miserable, but I would feel like, you know, I'm doing right by him. And, you know, we had a lot of conversations about this. I always try to do right by him to actually warn him that, you know, eventually I will leave. Please find someone to succeed me. And it really was easy to leave when he was gone.
Yeah, I left right at the same time Jamie passed away. I actually left I think within the same week, it was a very strange and traumatic week, I have to tell you. It was complete chaos. But the thing I took away from Jamie is that, the thing is, Jamie was an enormous guy, like a very large man.
Larger than life.
And also larger than life in terms of his personality. And the thing is, the funny thing about Jamie is he could throw his weight around in terms of being a little bit of a bully sometimes. But the thing is, when you got serious with him, like, he would do it almost in a way of just an offhanded way. He would be kind of a dick in a sort of an offhanded way. But the thing is, when things got serious and you really needed to talk, all of that bullshit would utterly vanish, and he would talk to you like a human being, which I don't know if I've ever seen that in another human being to the extent I saw it in Jamie. It's like when he knew that you really need to be talking on a human level, he was so good at that, and he could, whatever your problem was, he could discuss it with you.
And I see that as a mentor, like more than just a boss, because a boss is just someone who puffs up his chest, and we had quite a few of that too. You know, it's like, I'm the boss, do as you're told, you should not question. And I think these people, they do that more for their own benefit, just to feel like the boss. But there was an easy way about Jamie. Is he knew he was the boss. He didn't need to prove it. And you had a little bit of a tumultuous relationship with him, but I think it's also because you've always been an anarchist at heart. And I think you rebel against authority. You naturally do. Even though you have a lot of respect for it, it's really funny. You're a conundrum, and you always have been. It's like, you kind of a little bit fearful of authority, but you also rebel against it and you hate it.
I've been a boss in the past, and I was terrible at it.
Have you?
And here's the problem. I don't give a shit about other people. I don't know if that's I don't know if that comes as a surprise to anybody.
At least you're honest.
No, I really don't. Like, I don't have enough energy to care about your problems if you're working for me. Like, just do as you're told. It's not even do what you're told. Just do what's expected of you. I don't even want to have to tell you. I just want you to do it. Do you know what I mean? And I don't have enough time to deal with other people's problems or the politics or squabbling or whatever's going on. So I'm a terrible boss because I'm ultimately very selfish, right? And what I saw in Jamie was that he was a very gregarious person who really needed other people around in a certain way and loved to play off other people and loved to mess. Like, he's a bit of a busybody. Like, he likes to meddle in things. Like, when we have our show, right, he'd like to have us come in and give us ideas and talk about this and that. And
I would say he wanted to be involved.
He wanted to be involved.
I was more empathetic, you know, because he would go off and say, oh, you know, he should just leave us alone. You know, let us professionals do what we do. And I'm saying, but a good boss wants to be involved. They want to know what's going on without micromanaging, but they do want to know what's going on. And I think it's important to keep them informed. I was more reasonable, I would say.
And I think the thing is, you also are a more social and more gregarious person. So I think you also enjoy just the fun of the banter and being involved. And for you, like, the other thing is too, like, in our studio, Maddy was always inviting people into our studio and, like, fellow co-workers. And I'm like, leave these idiots out. You know, we're the morning show. We don't need these morons in the studio. Maddy's always bringing people in the studio, talking to this person, talking to that person.
I like a party.
But I feel like, in a way, you were kind of my boss too. I don't know. It was.
I guess I was your team leader. I was a team leader.
You were the anchor. So you were like a sergeant in the military. You'd be like the guy down, one of the guys down there on the ground leading the troops, right? Maybe. So I feel like you were a good boss in that way too, in that you also take a lot of consideration of what's going on with other people, and you sort of keep those sorts of things in mind, and interpersonal dynamics. Like, that's a big one. Bosses have to be masters of interpersonal dynamics. What's going on between people? How does this person relate to that? How can they work together to get their job
it's better if you have those qualities. There are leaders.
I think these are all essential. Like, that's the thing. I think we're much too accepting of bad leadership and bad bosses. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the positions who haven't earned these positions. And like, so this is something I think about a lot. I think the archetype of the ultimate boss would be a mentor. Like, so I think that you've chosen this topic well, because I like the idea almost like in medieval artisans. So you say I'm a shoemaker, right? So I'm a shoemaker, I'm a master of my craft. I bring in an apprentice, and I'm his boss, but I'm not threatened by him. I'm not politicking against him. I'm not trying to dominate him. I'm just trying to show him how to make the damn shoes.
To be better than you, maybe, to take over.
Yeah, maybe one day you want to take over the business. But the thing is, I've got to sell these shoes. If the shoes you're making are shit, I can't sell these shoes and you're wasting my time. So it's in my interest to make you a better shoemaker. We all win when you're a better shoemaker. So if you look at it that way, that is the ultimate sort of
boss, leader.
Yeah, mentor, boss, and leader, I think. And imagine you just spread it out to making the team bigger and imagining a company with different layers and structures. If we could maintain that mentality where we're all here to create a product, and I'm going to teach you what I know, and this person's going to teach the next person what he knows, and on down the line. If there was this sort of mentor mentality, and then if you had people in positions of leadership that all had skills that were worthy of being passed down. Like a big problem now is that a lot of times people are put into positions of leadership who don't really know anything about the product being made. I mean, you see this in the corporate world all the time. Like I can think of, like, I don't know much about this stuff, but you think of Steve Jobs, right? Like he left Apple, and then they brought in a guy who worked for like Pepsi or some damn thing, who sold sugar water, and then they're putting him in charge of a computer company, and then it crashed. Steve Jobs came back, you know? So, you know what I'm saying?
I do what you're saying, but I don't actually 100% agree with that, because I think there are some situations where that is valuable. For example, there are many companies that promote the good worker, right? But the thing is, the good worker usually is not a good leader, and they don't want to manage people. Like, for example, you're a great writer.
Like me, yeah.
You're a great writer, but you're not going to be a great editor.
I'm a terrible editor.
Because you don't care about other people. I
don't care what you wrote. Why do I have to read what you wrote? All I care about is what I wrote.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a perfect example. But often it's people like that who get promoted because you're good at what you do, and then the company rewards you by promoting you.
Yeah.
And sometimes the person who's not good at that job or doing that job is a great leader, and because he has an overview, means he's a master of none, but probably a jack of all trades. He has an overview, but because he can lead. And maybe he has a better sense of people and what they're good at, right? An eye for talent. And he's actually really, really good at orchestrating the whole thing to make the whole machine come together to work. So, I mean, in that sense...
I agree with you 100%, but I will say this. There's something to the idea that, okay, if you look at sports, right? I don't follow sports too closely, but from what I've seen, a lot of the coaches in sports are men who used to play, but they weren't great players.
They weren't the best, yes.
They sucked.
Yeah.
But they spent a lot of time on the bench watching the great players and watching how the team is put together, watching how the team dynamics work. Maybe they had to be something of a cheerleader because they're not out there performing very well, but they had to encourage the other guys. Those are the people that become great coaches. They have a sense of the industry, they have a sense of the task being done, but they're not great at the task, but they're great at organizing others to do the task.
Because sometimes when you're too entrenched into something, you actually can't see the overview.
The people who are best, the people who are the most skillful, I think sometimes have the least sympathy for the people who aren't as skillful. Like you look at an example of like Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player that ever lived. I mean, we all watched his show.
The Last Dance.
And he was poetry in motion. I mean, it's such a cliche, but I don't know how else to describe it.
Yep.
And then he became an owner of a team and he sucked. You know, my favorite ice hockey player, Wayne Gretzky, greatest hockey player in existence. He bought a team, he tried to be the coach, and he sucked.
Yep.
Because they don't have the sympathy and the personal skills necessary to know what these other players are going through because they were just so good.
Or they're just not, maybe they're not
wired that way.
Yes, yeah, they're all about me.
I'm the best, I'm going to win.
Yeah, and you need that. You need someone like that on your team to win, but you don't necessarily want them to run your team.
You think of it, Maddy, what you talked about being a mentor. The one quality that a mentor has to have more than anything else is generosity. Because you know how much of a pain it is to take time out of your day and to use your expertise that you acquired through hard work and perseverance, and then just give that to somebody else.
And that's so valuable because I remember we had a head of technician, we were trying to hire more technicians. And I remember this guy because he's not a mentor type of person. He's a very selfish.
Introverted probably.
No, not even introverted, like just lazy. Okay? And I remembered him telling me, I said, oh, okay, you're recruiting. So you want someone good, right? Let me think. And he goes, I don't want someone good. just someone will do. Because he doesn't want a mentor. He doesn't want his subordinate to be better than him. He's not thinking about succession. He doesn't want to train you to be better than him. He's a lousy boss, and he's an even worse mentor. And there are many, many bosses like that. They will compete with you. And
they're the opposite of a mentor.
Exactly, and that's when, you know, it don't matter how much you're getting paid, you are going to be miserable in your job. And that's why I think it's so valuable, you know, when we say like a boss who mentors is and can be a game changer in terms of your career success, is because when you have someone there, it's almost like having your own personal cheerleader, your own tutor. And more importantly, I think someone who believes in you, because when someone believes in you, there's that generosity of spirit that you talk about as well. I mean, it does take that to be a mentor.
It does.
Cheering for you, wanting you to succeed. It's okay if you become better than them or you know, exceed them, you go ahead of them. Like, there really is that generosity of spirit there. And when you have, that is such a powerful thing. And you cannot stress that enough, that is something money can't buy. So even if you switch jobs to like another high-paying job or your so-called dream job because of the scope of the work, but you don't actually have someone like that, a mentor who is cheering you on and rooting for your success, I think you might fail, and it's got nothing to do with your abilities too.
Yeah. I think that the way the world has become, with corporations sort of getting ever larger, like the example I would use now, because I follow Walt Disney on YouTube a lot. A lot of people make YouTube videos about Walt Disney and what's happened to the company. They went and they bought Pixar, they went and they bought Marvel, they went and they bought Star Wars, they went and they bought the Muppets, they bought all these different companies that were doing great on their own, and they ruined them. And now none of these companies are actually creating anything of much value anymore. And
hey, I like The Mandalorian. I'm okay. I love The
apparently
Mandalorian.
Season 3 has not lived up to the first two seasons.
I'm still
You're still on board? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, there's an ongoing debate.
Sure.
But what I really think is happening is these corporations have become so large and so diversified that there's no sense of what even the company is or what they're doing anymore. Corporate culture, I mean, you can sort of sneer at the term, but it kind of is an important thing. When Disney was just Disney, and it was run by Disney, and it was owned by Disney, and it was, even after he died, you know, his brother, I think, ran it for a while and stuff like this. But everybody knew what Disney was, right? It was 2D animation, it was princesses, it was music, it was magic, right? It was, and even in their later stages, it was Little Mermaid, it was Beauty and the Beast, it was Aladdin. That's Disney. Everybody knows that's Disney, right? But now, everything, it's like, when I watch a Marvel movie, is that Disney? When I watch a Star Wars movie, is that Disney?
Diversified. I mean, that is the buzzword.
But what they've done is they've taken all these things, and all these things have been slightly Disneyfied, and they've lost their own personality, and there's no sense of really what the company is or what they're doing or who they are. All these companies have lost their identity because they've all been bought by Disney. It's hard to have a mentor relationship when you take that medieval example I just used. When you're making shoes, I know what my business is. I'm making shoes, and I'm teaching you to make shoes, and we're going to make the best shoes in our little town, and we're going to make all the money, and then we're going to go have whiskey and meet some women. Okay, it's all very clear.
It's so simple.
Yes, it's all so clear. When you have a company, a big company, and more as the world goes on, these conglomerates are growing and growing. You know, and you can use Amazon as another example, and Apple as another example. What are these companies, and what are they doing, and what are we trying to teach each other? It's like, say I'm working for Apple. I'm in one division, and I'm doing handphones. It's conceivable that I can be taken out of this position and be put in charge of their streaming service or something like that. And then it's like, what knowledge do I have, and what knowledge can I pass on? Does this make any sense, or have I gone off on a horrible tangent here? Makes sense, right? So it's like, as the world becomes more agglomerated, everything just becomes this gray ooze, and we're losing the sense of artisanship and craftsmanship in favor of just like being too big to fail, and just like bringing in money from so many different places, you don't even know where it's coming from anymore.
Because it's all about expansion and growth and acquisition.
Yes, and so there's that sense, that idea of craftsmanship. And now I can say in my own personal experience, I've seen this happen. I was with a magazine that was bought, and I could see what happened in that situation. I'm not blaming anybody for what happened. I'm just saying I saw it, and I ended up being okay and going to even better positions down the line. But I feel like what's being lost in our world right now is a sense of personal ownership over a craft, and a sense of pride in a craft, and a sense of pride even in a company. Like, one place where I think you can see this, and this is a very controversial guy, but something like Tesla, where it's like, I don't know that he treats his employees great, but when you work for Tesla, you know what you're doing. You're making electric cars, and you're making self-driving cars, and you're saving the planet, and blah, blah, blah. There's a certain mission. Now, how the employees are treated, that's another thing, but you're learning the craft of making a car, right? And you can pass that knowledge on to somebody else, presumably. And there's skills and there's systems that have to be learned that can all be learned and ingrained in the company and the culture, right? Now, as soon as Tesla is bought over by Apple, or I think in the end, Apple's going to own everything. I think in the end, Apple's going to own Tesla. I think they're going to own Disney. I think they're going to own everything.
Apart from being an anarchist, he's also a conspiracy theorist.
Yes. No, but I don't know. I've gone off on too much of a tangent here, but this is what I'm saying. We all have to strive and struggle to keep a sense of what we're doing as a craft, and that what we're doing is personal, and that what we're doing, we can take pride in what we're doing. Like when we were on the radio, I took care, believe it or not, I took pride in the craftsmanship that we displayed. It sounded like complete anarchy, and sometimes I sound like a blithering idiot, but believe it or not, I did take pride in the show and what we were doing. I took a lot of pride in the fact that we were able to have some really good conversations and able to give people a lot of entertainment. And when people would say, I was in the car and I was laughing, I mean, there's a sense of pride. Yeah, but it
took your mentor. So back to mentorship.
Yes.
You know, it does take a mentor to steer you back. Like, you know, at times when you lose track, or, you know, you lost the will to do it, or you're not sure why you're doing it, or you're fighting amongst yourselves over things that are not important. It takes that mentor to come in.
Now.
It takes a mentor to steer you back on course.
Yes.
Right? And to set things right, and to believe in you, or during times when you don't believe in yourself or each other, when things are falling apart.
Here's the thing, Maddie, and I know I've been talking a lot, but I want to say this ties directly back to Jamie, because Jamie himself was a DJ. And I don't know whether he was the best DJ, but he was a DJ before he went into management. And he was able to bring that appreciation and that sympathy for what he did to his job. There was that sense of it being personal.
Because he understood
what we were going through.
Yes.
And he loved the industry, and he loved the craft because he did it. And I think he still wanted to do it in a way. I think he wished he'd still been a DJ. But he was able to bring his love for radio into our relationship and pass that on to us. And I think that's what made Jamie such a great boss.
Yes and no. I think also because he was quite sensitive deep inside, even though he didn't appear that way.
Yeah.
I think he was very insightful as well. And I think, you know, one of the great traits of a good mentor is being able to identify your strengths and weaknesses. So, you know, whether or not you can do the job, that's one thing. I think understanding the scope of the job and the people whose job you are in charge of, that's important. And then being able to identify their strengths and weaknesses. And that comes from, I guess, like a people skill.
I think that's kind of almost innate. Like that comes from something that...
Like you have it or you don't, right?
You have it or you don't.
Yeah.
Because I know, Maddie, like sometimes we'd be talking and I don't know where other people are coming from. Like I'd have a problem with this person and Maddie would say, well, obviously this person thinks this. And because this person and this person did this, they think that. And then so you should act accordingly in this way. Whereas I don't see any of that, but you would see all of that. And I think Jamie was the same way. He would see how these interpersonal dynamics play out.
And I think good mentors, bosses, they're able to do that.
Yeah.
Because you need to, I think it's so important to identify your strengths and weaknesses and to know what they are, because we all have them. And to be very comfortable in your weaknesses as much as your strength, because like you say, for every strength, you have a corresponding weakness.
Everybody.
And there's nothing wrong with that,
yeah.
Right? And a mentor believes in you and is able to hone in on your strength, but also work on your weaknesses, but make sure that you don't focus too much on that as well, so that doesn't become your Achilles heel.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's things like that, you know, I think it's important to, yes, I mean, what you talked about, I think it's a huge topic. It's probably a little bit too confounding for my mind. But for me, one of the things that are on a more basic level, day to day when I see my friends or even my own staff getting bored with their jobs or wanting to switch, whether it's for money or boredom or whatever reason that is, You know, one of the things I always ask them is there someone there who is willing to teach you, who believes in you? I think that's so important because when I look at my own life experience, I was always me. I always had the same abilities, I think, that were there, that were just waiting to be
exploited.
I was going to say explored, not exploited, but you know what I mean.
Both,
that was just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah.
And I was in other radio stations before, but my bosses didn't see that in me. They didn't see that ability, that possibility in me. Maybe they saw those as my weaknesses and what would hinder me. Whereas it takes one boss that looks at those strengths and weaknesses and go, hey, that's potential.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
and then
beautiful.
say, and then I'll put you in this place where you are able to truly blossom. And that's a mentor. So it's really important that wherever you go, sometimes it's not just about the job, it's about the person, your boss, your direct boss, whether he or she believes in you and he or she is vested in your growth, your career growth, and your personal growth. Because if you have that person, I think that's more powerful than any money a job can pay you. Because when you have that, you have the ability to earn. Because that person can take you places because they believe in you.
That's beautiful. And I feel like that Jamie took so much pride in what our show was able to
He believed in you, you know.
He believed more in you, and then you believed more in me, and then eventually he believed in
Yes,
me.
but because he had to believe in me to believe in you. So it doesn't matter, but it takes belief, right?
It does take belief.
And that is the core of it at the end of the day.
I think if you're not the kind of person who can look at and assess, like you talked about, the strengths and weaknesses of individuals and figure out how you can use the strengths and the weaknesses to your advantage, you shouldn't be a boss. That should be the #1 skill, is being able to assess people and figure out how to use them almost as a tool. Like a screwdriver is great at screwing screws, but it's not good at hammering. But that's what you have a hammer for. So it's about, I mean, this is a very tired and cliched metaphor, but I mean, it's like a boss should be able to look at people and assess what they're good for and assess what they can do for the company and how best to utilize those talents to build what you're trying to build, which is a company, and to bring in money and everybody can be happy and successful.
And I'll go one step further as well. You were talking about the spirit of servitude, and I think the best bosses have that, is what would better serve you as well as my employee.
Yes.
You know, in the long run, you know, how can I provide that job satisfaction? It's not just what you can do for me, but what can I do for you? And if I want you to continue to grow and stay with me in the company and to continue bringing in money for the company, so to speak, and to remain productive, I got to make sure that your well-being is served as well, right? So I think it's both ways, and that's really important. So
I think we've solved all the world's problems.
So yeah, you know, a good mentor is someone who is willing to share their expertise, knowledge to help you avoid common pitfalls, develop new skills. They provide regular feedback on your performance, and they hold you accountable to your goals and objectives. I think that's important as well, to hold you accountable.
And they also sign your nice big fat paychecks.
And it leads to better job satisfaction and retention. A boss who mentors can help you feel more engaged and satisfied with your job, and we went through that as well. So when you have a clear sense of direction and purpose, you're actually more likely to stay motivated and committed to your work, and thus leading to higher job satisfaction, which then will make you stay. So think about it. If you are not happy where you are,
it's your boss's fault. He's not a good mentor.
That's not what I'm saying.
Start plotting his downfall today.
But there is a saying, people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses.
100%.
Is that the saying?
If it's not Maddie, it should be, and you should get credit for it.
No, it is a saying. So there's that too. So, but don't discount how important a good mentor is. So if you have a good mentor, it's worth double or triple the paycheck that somebody can offer you at another place when nobody believes in you.
Shout out to Royston and Jean Marie, who are another couple of good bosses I had in my life, who I really appreciated the stuff they did.
And bless you, Jamie. Until the next podcast, you can Follow us on Instagram. I'm at Maddy Barber.
Instagram, Jason F. Johnson, at Jason F. Johnson.
You can DM us with your feedback as well. We value it. Thank you.